Welcome to this Factor Apps feature spotlight on FormFactor. Let's get started on how we can create modern, dynamic, and secure forms in Power Platform in minutes, not weeks. In this video you'll hear an overview of FormFactor and the value it brings. See the end-user experience for FormFactor created forms. And see the form maker experience to create and style forms. Let's follow along with our recent conversation with Pax8.
Where we've come from with this form factor is still an unmet need from Power Pages, which is that creation of dynamic and modern forms. So Power Pages is fantastic in like its content delivery, reliability, scalability, all that sort of stuff. But the ability to generate forms that dynamically respond to user input, to have them created automatically without having a pro code developer spending many days of time on them isn't there in the product inherently. So that's kind of where, so the whole Factor Apps business model, that the area that I run here and with Luke we're building out, is a part of Factor but focused on that productization. So where we're seeing with lots of clients, they've got the same challenges. We're trying to productize those into various apps and take them out to get people a quicker realization of value. And what we've been hearing are in the forms area is there's a need for dynamic and secure forms as part of both internal portals, external portals, particularly around government, but also any private enterprise of any scale that's dealing with a lot of people still have like Microsoft Word-based forms, Excel documents, those sorts of things. And so
it's a 100% a need. I've got a lot of Dynamics partners that attempt to get into Power Pages and quickly realize this is not their skill set, and they've got to go and find someone who can go and help them with this skill set. So I think you're on. Definitely, this is going to be very appealing to a lot of Pax8 partners.
Wonderful, and you're spot on, because it is a competitive skill set in the market. And so our proposition here with FormFactor is you can create forms in minutes, not weeks. So you use an editor that's intuitive to use. You can add pages, sections, questions to it. You sort of it's click through for everything. You don't have to be there doing pro code development. And then when you hit launch, it launches to a Power Pages URL. You can leave that where it is. You can embed it in another Power Pages portal you've built. You can embed it in an app, whatever you want to do with it. And so there's a couple of ways to realize that benefit. Like one is, as you say, it's hard to find Power Pages developers. So the one that you may have access to with limited time, they can spend a lot less time building out forms and more time using their special skills in other areas. Or you can potentially have someone who's not as strong on Power Pages still contribute to building out the forms. That might be a junior developer, or it might even be someone in the business who's not technical at all, but they're trying to communicate what they want. They're probably the person that's designed, say, a Microsoft Word form that gets emailed around at the moment, because they understand the business need, but they haven't got that technical skills to build it out in a form. But this will let them do that without having to get really deep technical skills.
Yep, makes sense.
I'll just run through a couple of case studies that we've done. So, we've got it with Microsoft now in AppSource. We're just going through that process with them at the moment. Once that gets approved, it'll be available for anyone to download via the Microsoft AppSource store. Then you put it into your tenant, so it lives inside your Microsoft setup. So it's all the data resides with you. It just sits there as another Power Platform app there. So the solution lives in production for use by the users to create these forms. Or you don't have to keep pushing it from dev to test to prod all the time. It just sits there in production, and people can create forms. If you're into like big system development, lots of integrations, you can also deploy it at the development level and integrate it in with those other applications. But the simplest and recommended pattern is we get that into production for simple and fast form creation, and then we got built-in controls so that even though a user might have access to it, they still can't just be shooting off forms into the wild with no organizational control. There's a review and approval process that you can make sure gets in the hands of the right people. Once it goes through that, it is one-click deployment. So it auto generates the forms according to the template. We've got a modern looking default template, but we can configure that to put organizational logos, colors. You can tweak fonts. If you want to go completely restyle it, that's more of a customization, but there's a technical possibility to do that as well. And then once it's up and live, all the data is sent back using that Power Pages delivery network. If it's deployed in Power Pages, goes straight into Dataverse. So you can either whack a Power BI dashboard over the top and analyze the data. So something like survey results would be a good use case for that. Or maybe it's a case management application. And so with the data in Dataverse, you can use that to trigger your existing case management system. Or if you need to build out a custom Power app around case management, you can do that with the data as well. So there's, these are the types of scenarios we've encountered. We've found way more paper, Excel, Word-based forms in the wild than we hoped in 2024, but they certainly are out there. So that is a common use case. A couple of clients have been talking to, they're saying, well, we've got hundreds of Word documents that we send around. We want to digitize them. We don't know how to quantify the effort. This can solve that scenario for them. Also, some organizations, part of their citizen-facing services or their client business is a need for clients to fill in a report for some sort of review. They might need to attach evidence, other documents to it. All that gets done by email at the moment. So we can have secure document transfer through uploading documents to the form. You can even have payment plugins as well. So some processors have a small fee. At the moment, they've got to jump to other systems. We can embed that in there as well. The organizational survey scenarios where we actually sort of started with the idea, but a lot of the third-party tools, they host their data on external systems. So sometimes people want to keep that data internally. And a lot of permutations on those sorts of ideas. But so this is at a high level what it looks like. On the left is the paper-based form that they're running at the moment. On the right is a quick version that we whipped up in a matter of minutes, just putting some of those fields in. So you can see it's styled and looks like a very minimalist, very modern form.
Did you create it by hand, or did you use the AI to capture a picture of the screen and then produce it?
That is on the roadmap. Because where we want to go with that is we don't want to use the AI to just create a Power Pages form. We want to use the AI to drive FormFactor, so you still get all the benefits of the styling and good auto creation. But exactly right, because it's really is a repetitive process. Going, okay, well, here's the form for common things like name and address, and let's
and I've identified a checkbox. Well, we know what a checkbox does, so it does make a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's I think a really important use case, because it will help us, especially those organizations with a large number of forms, digitize them quickly for them.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
This one's using FormFactor, right? Or this
is all using FormFactor. Yeah,
that's amazing. That's incredible.
We'll go through in the demo. We'll sort of show you some of what the end forms look like, and then walk backwards through what was the maker process we went to arrive at those forms. And in this one, this was an interesting one because there was both a Word and an Excel version of the same form. We could combine those into a consolidated form and support that review process. That was where we were talking about earlier, where they need to embed attachments in the response and get those securely tracked and stored. The secure surveys one, which, as I mentioned, was where we fell into first really exploring FormFactor in detail. SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics, a lot of these organizations, they store their data on their own servers, proprietary systems, often in areas where a particular Australian government isn't 100% comfortable with that data residing, or they're not allowed to have the data residing there. And so at the same time, they do a really good job in having interactive survey responses. It's easy to use for the respondents, easy to use for the creators. So with FormFactor, we're able to create a similar experience, but have that data securely reside in the organization's tenant. So if someone answers yes or no to an earlier question, it'll take them down a different path of follow-on questions, which is something that takes a lot of manual coding out of Power Pages to date.
Can I just ask about reputation here? Not so much yours or mine, but SurveyMonkey's reputation with becoming a way to market towards people. One of the benefits I understand with SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics is the spam tag that they won't get because they're a recognized product.
Yep.
Would that be a similar challenge for someone who's creating a Power Pages app with this new strange URL that Microsoft presents as a front-facing URL? Will that trap some domains?
If you put it into something that doesn't get recognized, then that's potential. So the forms that we create, we can surface them in the existing recognized websites as a page. So it would be government department .gov.au/survey XYZ. So you can load them in the right areas so they get the recognition of the parent domain in there.
Right.
Also, if they're internal, then they're coming from those trusted internal sources, so reduce the spam around those as well. But that is one of the good things with those ones, because they've got such wide recognition. They put a lot of work into avoiding those spam filters.
So does your system? Does that mean my knowledge on Power Pages is that you could get a page, you then get a URL that Microsoft give you. Does FormFactor solution enable you to? Do you have a process to manage that using a custom domain?
Yes. So for the we kind of piggyback off Power Pages there to a certain extent. So anywhere where there's a customer where they go, we have a domain, sending from our domain is important to us. You can actually add a subdomain into Power Pages. So let's say, it gives you a URL, let's say pax8 formfactor.powerappsportals or whatever it is. You can turn it into, formfactor.pax8.com, pretty simply, just by adding a subdomain and a certificate like you would any other site. So that's what we usually suggest, and that's pretty much what all government customers want anyway, and probably most customers for that matter. To have it as a subdomain sitting off the back of their primary domain, and then you get all the recognition that way. There'll probably be obviously there's the URL of the actual form itself is one consideration, but the other consideration is how let's say if it is a survey that's going to, let's say in a B2C scenario, you'll have emails going out, pretty consistently. We would anticipate that those emails would go out using Dynamics or Dynamics Marketing or something similar if they are seeing them en masse. And generally, they get really good treatment as from email providers, and same goes for anything that comes from a Microsoft account, right? Because you can set up survey notifications to come from they come from an Office 365 mailbox, which get pretty good treatment as well, right? So usually, for the most part, in most scenarios, you're going to get better results with avoidance of spam, because it's coming from your organizational domains, email addresses, as opposed to a SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics, FormStack, whatever generic email sender.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, so it's usually better, we think.
Yep. Great, awesome. Maybe next version would be I think there's a product called Let's Encrypt from memory, which basically provides free SSL certificates on the fly. It's automated the whole process. So I can imagine, I'm not telling you how to rev your version, but having a SSL generated on the fly for that domain and have it automatically applied, that would be and it's really easy to do. Let's Encrypt. I'm pretty sure it's called Let's Encrypt. I apologize if it's not, but I'm pretty sure.
No, it is. But that's something we don't really have control over, to be honest. I mean, that's really. Okay. I think Microsoft are looking at something like that, but at the moment, it's a bit of a pain, right? You have to load a certificate in, and something like Let's Encrypt is not ideal because it has a 3-month expiry, I think. Top of my head.
It's automated. The renewal's automated as well. But
Yeah,
you're right.
exactly.
It's a problem. If your solution fixes another problem, great.
Correct.
If it doesn't, then
Yeah.
it's a problem we'll keep with.
Definitely. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, and yeah, in just trying to summarize what the user experience looks like instead of sitting there in the code environment.
I'm getting anxious looking at it.
You get to click the buttons and see that creation on the fly. And the way that we package it up is clients they expect the system to work, so we'll help them. They can download it from app source. We're there to support them through that process, make sure it gets installed successfully. If anything does break, we've got a support address that they can contact us on, and we can help walk through that. Then we offer a few different paths forward for them. So one is an adoption kickstart, where we'll sit with them, help them go through the creation of the first couple of forms, realize the value there, and then they can then choose to keep using their in-house personnel to build out. Or if they've got certain packages of work in mind, we offer the customizable service blocks as well, so it can help with things like form digitization, or if they want custom themes or particular dashboards, we can work with them around that as well. So
I love it.
Hopefully that gives a good overview of where it all sits, and then I'll hand over the reins to Luke, and we'll show you FormFactor in action.
So you can see here, I've launched the form. We've really focused on look and feel first, so making it look really great, simple and easy to use for the end user. And again, even that as a holistic concept is something that is not really catered for in the native Power Pages forms. So having multi-step forms, being able to save and revert back to a form. Let's say you haven't completed all the information and you don't know the answers and you want to save and come back. That simple scenario isn't really accounted for in Power Pages. You kind of have to leave the tab open and hope your computer doesn't restart or something like that, which is not exactly the best user experience. There's no better way to turn a user away from your survey than if they fill out 95% of it and get stuck at the end and they lose all their data. So we've got that built in right out of the box. But what you can see is here that we've got, so depending on the answer that I choose, a new field will pop up. And we've got conditional validation available across all of our forms. So if you provide an answer or a data point and you want to show and hide fields based on that value, that's really easy to do. Same goes for if you want to make a certain field required, if a certain value equals another one, that's right out of the box. Also, entire sections in this form. So for example, this token details section, you can show and hide. Same goes for the tabs on the left-hand side. So everything is completely dynamic and can be configured without any code inside our form editor. And just to give some context, to even achieve a basic requirement such as showing this user ID field, if this is marked as existing user, would take probably a day worth of work across the board in terms of having a developer write a script, but they then have to commit, test, send through that entire process, and it takes in our app about 2 minutes.
That's insane.
So it's a fairly significant time saving, and you can imagine what that looks like when you extrapolate that across, this entire form, and then you across 10 forms, 100 forms, whatever the business might have.
Just a quick question: what is the underlying language that Microsoft used for the Power Pages?
So Power Pages, it's a bit of a mix. So they have so you can create a form. So if when you create those Dataverse forms, right, you configure the fields and the look and feel. So you can set them up to basically render directly inside of Power Pages. So you can configure those forms and then go into Power Pages and say, yep, I want that form that I set up in Power Apps to render here. What the problem is, I guess, is that none of the functionality, so like the business rules function where you can show and hide fields, that doesn't work. So that simply does not apply in portals, whereas it does in your model-driven apps, for example. So you basically have to write front-end scripts in JavaScript using jQuery to manipulate the form. And the way that you do that is by basically manipulating the DOM actually. So the actual HTML you need to manipulate and show and hide using jQuery to make fields appear and disappear and become required.
It's complex. Yeah,
it's
a
complex,
lot of
right?
coding for
jQuery is good. Yeah, jQuery's got a great reputation for being gentle with the DOM as well. That's
yeah.
Is that a thing? It's quite.
It just clobbers it.
Clobbers. Yeah, that's the word I was thinking.
Yeah.
And then then all of a sudden you've got challenges with performance because you've got users who may or may not know how to write script. They're reading forum posts and they're having their giving their best effort at it, but at the end of the day, what it results in is usually not a great experience. And Microsoft's solution to that of late has been, well, here's a Copilot in Visual Studio Code for you to do that with.
That's not low code. That's getting to pro code, and we're supposed to be selling
exactly. It's pro code, and it's terrifying, and it's it struggles to review your data. So you'll say, hey, can you make this first name field show and hide, and then it will give you some other name for the field, and you'll put it in, it won't work, and then someone who was already terrified of pro code is going, okay, I'm stuffed. So we've basically tried to turn all that functionality and make it possible using what you see is what you get editor. That's the whole intent. So we're not creating anything particularly groundbreaking or revolutionary from a form side. Most of the functionality users will be familiar with in Microsoft Forms, Form Stack, whatever it is. So we don't like to talk too much to that fact. It's more the fact that you can keep the data inside Database and what you can do with it and how secure and seamless the look and feel is as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and smash this out. You can see it's really easy. I can do things like tab through the fields. Again, not something that's possible out of the box. It doesn't really like to go the right way.
How does it work in terms of disability as well? I know at Power Apps specifically, you're really strong with making sure you do correct tags and visual assignments. Is it similar here as well? Because you're obviously dealing with the government, which needs to make sure it's offering solutions for the entire breadth of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got so you can see here, we've got a whole bunch of what we see as sort of standard notification and UX elements to help guide users through the process, like accessibility driven and sort of web content accessibility guideline compliant stuff to help guide the user that needs to be aligned with government. But we have tried to make it we haven't tried to make it too governmenty. You know what I mean? Like, we still want it to be seamless, great look and feel, and easy to use for anyone, and not make it some crazy government focused super complex form. So if I go and hit next, you'll see that it's just going to take me to the next tab. I've got hover overs. We're improving the look and feel on this one. I can specify what the fields are here. I'll just smash through that. And then you'll see that, I can configure links to other pages as well. So again, all these elements here, so notifying the user that they need to do something or alerting them of something, that's not supported out of the box. You cannot put any additional information inside the form without running code, basically, so other than your fields. So you've got your fields, you're building if you imagine you're building a model-driven app form, for example, you can't just put in hey, this is how you need to do something label per se, let alone one that looks really good, has a link in it to say their fact sheet. We've really focused on sort of the look and feel and the UX for the user, and making that easy to configure for the, someone of, relatively low Power Platform capability.
Speaking of low Power Platform capability, is this mobile responsive?
I can show you.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Right.
Perfect.
Sorry. So yeah, it's completely responsive.
Great. Love it.
So again, it works it works across all of the Microsoft Power Platform services as well. So whilst it can be, our primary use cases in portals, this same form can be embedded in Canvas apps and model-driven apps as well. So it's not just limited to portals. But yeah, obviously. Oh, sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say it's great that does that. Themes, colors, CSS, is that easy to bring in because I've already got my own palette and whatever I got to do, or am I stuck with what you guys have?
No, so themes, customizing a theme on a per form basis is something we'll be releasing into the wild. So you can set up the colors, the fonts, the sizing for the fields, all of that inside our app, and that will then render directly out into the form. We don't expose, so you can obviously layer CSS on top of this. We don't recommend it because it's you then create the whole host of having to manage CSS, and then we want to make it as simple and as easy for users to do. So we'll have an experience where you can configure all the color palettes, the font sizes, the font types, its general sizing as well. And that'll be all available within the app in a what you see is what you get editor, rather than having to write CSS or any other form of styling.
And what do you think about open sourcing this? I always ask questions to people like with your caliber who have this deep experience. I'm a strong believer in just giving it away for two reasons. It shows the comfort level you have with such a product like this, but also it does such a huge amount to uplift the base so that they can actually begin this workload themselves. Has that been discussed?
We haven't run any open source projects before. I think something like this, there is I think there is a distinction between an enterprise level version that is really tailored for specific client uses, and maybe a more widespread simpler version that does assist a great number of people. So certainly not against it. It's something we haven't done previously before.
Yeah, it's really good, very impressive.
So so that's pretty much the sort of core form experience, and of course you can come back, revert back, and all save your state as well. So again, another thing that the out of the box doesn't do. If you leave and come back, it'll send you back right to the start if you manage to get that far. So this is the sort of the look and feel roughly for the external user. Again, there's a lot of configuration that can be done, but really simple, easy to use, and we focus very heavily on user experience. So that's one side of the coin.
And I was just going to ask, is this form also offlineable? It's the right term for it. Can I take this out to Northern Territory, or there's absolutely no service, and do a survey?
I think it depends on the browser. It's definitely offlineable when it's embedded in Canvas apps and model-driven apps. As it relates, I'll need to check, because I believe the form does save the state locally of the answers, but obviously it can't submit without internet
until it gets back.
And probably what we would do in a scenario where, so for example, we've looked at a couple where there is field survey of remote areas, so stuff through remote Queensland, for example. In that scenario, we'd probably bundle it up so you'd use the FormFactor to create the form, but you would wrap it in a progressive web app so that it could be taken offline and operated in that sort of manner. Would be the way we'd probably tackle that.
Yeah, I forgot that there's that whole PWAs that's around. They're not often discussed in the Dynamics world, but they do exist, and there's a very good way to do it. That's really good. Is there anything else you'd like to show on? Oh, you're showing something here.
So that's like the experience for the end user, right? So the other side of the coin is the experience for the maker. So someone who's going in, setting up a new form, trying to configure that end to end. So, and you can see here, I can just go to the form and hit one button, hit configure. And from here, I get the sort of what you see is what you get experience to manage that form. So you can see on the left-hand side here, we've got those tabs as you saw them inside the user experience. And then you've got sections and then questions. So I don't need to create fields in Dataverse if I want to add a new question. It's as simple as going new question, selecting from the list of different types of fields that we have on offer. You know, it's all the standard ones: text, file upload, option set, number, date, etc. I just set the label. I can add a placeholder.
Couldn't have been any simpler. That's
exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And then we've got the ability to create rules and validations as well. So you can set required rules, hidden rules. You know, it's as simple as going if. I probably need to unpublish this one, but you know, I can select a value, say if it equals 2, and it will hide the field or show it.
It'd be great when Copilot gets added to that section because no one likes doing if statements.
Exactly, exactly. And look, it's not exactly where we want it to be at the moment, even in this state. But it's better than writing code, and it's better than having to write, you know, even like an expression or something here. You can just use the look and feel that people are sort of used to when they're setting up those views.
Can you test it here, or is that something further on down the
Yeah,
line?
you can. So if I go into the preview section, you'll see that I've got a rendering of the form. So if I go into the form that I was showing you before, go to publish forms, central budget, go to the preview, you'll see that behaves exactly the same. And it's essentially the same component that's rendering out this form here as you were seeing in that portal.
Nice. What about if we needed to capture a signature? Is that something that's doable in this process here, or is that a separate?
Yeah, so it's on our roadmap, but it's definitely achievable, and we'd be using the standard portals functionality probably for DocuSign, or having a sort of signature pop up inside of portals if that is acceptable to the customer, so they don't have to use DocuSign.
Yeah, DocuSign is not the cheapest solution in the world. I think
no.
There are quite a few options in the Power Platform now that does document capture. Signature capture. It's just DocuSign's is the Kleenex of signatures, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, and then I can look at all the submissions here directly inside the app as well. So.
Great, and this is so good because from here you get your marketing systems pick up from here. It's great. It's really, really powerful stuff you guys built.
Yeah, and thank you. And what we're doing as we build it out and roll it out is that, some of those questions you have today, as we get those roadmap items completed, we can roll them out to users. The core app just gets that functionality, but it doesn't impact the forms that they've already created. So it's not like if it was a bespoke system that built for a client, you do an update. There's all this convoluted configuration management we've got to go through. We keep that core app the same, and we keep their content that they've created separate, and then we can give them the benefit of those updates.
Yeah, it's very good.
That's been our Factor Apps feature spotlight for FormFactor. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to visit the website or reach out via email with any questions.